title this whole chapter. Paul, the Apostle Paul, has given us the theory in the first 3 chapters, and chapter 4 is the practical application. It's the hard part, because so often we know, I know that, but to actually do it, and this is why he's challenging the church to get their act together in many practical ways. He understands that there's going to be circumstances in life that, well, we're not going to appreciate. But how then should we respond when times get tough? When there's persecution, when people give us a hard time, how should we respond? And so he gives us the practical applications, and he tells us that through all of this we're to stand firm in the Lord. And he's given so many principles, and we only got to the first 2 last time, and we're picking up on verse 3. And there's no such thing as a perfect church. If you're looking for the perfect church, it's perfect till you step into it. Because from that point in time, it's not perfect. Every person who is in that church is imperfect. That's why we gather together, because we're all tarred with the same brush. We're in the process of being changed and transformed. But you know what? We haven't arrived there yet. We're not perfect. We haven't got our act together. And so we're on the journey of life together. And Paul was saying that in the church, everybody knew about this church and what it was doing, but it wasn't without its problems. And in particular, as we mentioned last week, there was a problem between 2 ladies. How strange. These 2 ladies were prominent women, and you know what? It seems as though they couldn't get on. They had strong personalities, and they had been with Paul from the beginning, it seems, in the foundation of the church. But here they were, splitting and dividing the church, which often happens. It doesn't take much for this side to draw against that side, and so the battle lines were drawn, and Paul was saying, cut it out, get your act together. And so in verse 3, he uses what I call a supportive facilitator. He says, yes, I say also to you, true companion, help them. They have struggled together in the gospel ministry along with me and Clement and my other co-workers whose names are in the book of life. Now, in our text, it's an interesting situation. Who is Paul speaking about here when he asks them to be the active facilitator with these 2 women on his behalf? Now, can you imagine the scene in church on that particular Sunday when they're meeting together and Paul's letter is read out to them? The elders haven't told them what's in the letter yet. Now they're reading that letter to everybody in the congregation. He starts at chapter 1. He's worked his way through to chapter 4. And then, lo and behold, these 2 ladies, their names are mentioned. What do you think their response would be to hear the Apostle Paul name them? Do you think they might be a little bit stunned, to say the least? Maybe just a little bit embarrassed? And our text says here, I ask you to help these women. And Paul uses a Greek word, Suzukos. Sounds like the word Suzuki, doesn't it? But it's not. It's Suzukos, which is referring to someone who helps carry the load, someone who is a partner in the work. And so the question asked is, who is Paul talking about? And there's lots of speculation that's based on the premise that Paul had been so particular to mention these 2 women by name. He also mentions Clement. And the thought is that this person is named also. Someone Paul knew, and that person knew him. Others seem to think he might be referring to the church, being his fellow workers, to step up and help these women get right with the Lord. And I think one old commentator has got some good thoughts when he says to the text, Paul is talking to a real person named Suzukos. There is nothing we know about him except maybe the possibility that he could be one of the elders mentioned in the church. Now, Paul is exercising his pastoral authority by requesting this person to hurry up, get these women together, help them, because Paul cannot be there to deal with it. So it's Paul's way of identifying the man as true to his name. If you like, he's Paul's go-to man, the peacemaker, the conflict resolver, whose job was to promote peace and harmony within church. He didn't want this man to go in boots and all and give these two prominent ladies what for, because Paul says, these women have also shared in my struggle in the gospel. It's thought these two women were part of the foundational group that established the church at Philippi, and they had laboured long and hard with Paul to see the church come into being. Now, what Paul is saying is, it hadn't been easy to get the church, this particular church, off the ground. There was a price to pay. And these faithful people had paid that price to see the church come to fruition. And Paul is saying these two women had been part of it. And he's saying, I want you to do all you can to help these women who shared in my struggle to accomplish the church being founded. Now, in our text, he doesn't make mention of the two women here. There was Clement, who was thought to be another leader in the church, and all the others who were involved in helping the church get founded. Now, Paul might not have mentioned their names, but there probably were many of them. And he says their names are written in the book. And he reminds them, the best thing is their names are written in the book of life, and that's more important. So he's named a few people, but he hasn't named every one of them. But to back that up, he says, look, the most important thing that's important for you is that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life, and it won't be forgotten. So he's reminding Sugos, be patient with these two women. They're part of the team. They are believers. They are workers with others whose names are written in the book of life. So basically he's saying, I want you to facilitate some action between these two women, bring them together, sort them out, but remember who you're dealing with. And in verse 4, a sustained focus. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Now, if you go back to your Sunday school days, how many of you remembered rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice? Can you remember it being done as a round? This side would start and that side would pick up, and it all got messed up somewhere in the middle because some group didn't start at the right time. But you got the message. Rejoice, rejoice again, rejoice always in the Lord. And he emphasizes this statement. If you want to stand firm in the Lord, he says rejoice in him. What does that mean? Rejoice in the Lord. And again I say rejoice. What does that actually mean? If you're rejoicing, what are you doing? Now, I know, be happy, but I know on Wednesday night that Leslie is going to be watching his State of Origin team win. And when they win, what do you think he'll do? He'll be well, maybe he won't be jumping up and down. But I tell you what, he won't be saying, oh, good win, boys, good win. He'll be rejoicing with them in victory. Now, I'm not going to tell you who he goes for, but I do the same team. We haven't had much victory lately. But he's going to be rejoicing. He's not going to sit quietly by. He's going to be full of joy, and that's going to balance out any of the negative circumstances that people might be encountering in their walk with the Lord. And it's an important principle. We are to have a sustained focus on the Lord. And if we have that sustained focus on the Lord, we're not going to allow ourselves to become victim to our circumstances. We will not allow our circumstances to dictate how we're going to respond. We're not going to allow our circumstances to overwhelm us and smother us. Now let's face it, in life, are we going to experience just the highs? Oh, we wish. We're going to experience high, good times, but you know, they're going to be balanced with some bad times. There'll be some successes. There'll be some failures. And what Paul is saying is we need to have a spiritual balance in our lives. Our focus should be on the Lord and His presence, because no matter what circumstances we're in, we never walk alone through life. He walks with us, and He takes us through those circumstances. So he says, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. Now there's something else. When it says rejoice in the Lord, isn't it an optional extra for the believer? Always. But you know what? It's a command. It's given as a command. And it's a command that we're given so that we don't forget. Paul says, I say again, rejoice in the Lord. Note he said, rejoice in the Lord. He didn't say rejoice in your circumstances. He doesn't say don't rejoice in the way things are going in the world. Don't rejoice over what you've been able to achieve. Don't rejoice in people. They come and go. Don't rejoice over yourselves. He says rejoice in the Lord. That's to be our focus. And he adds always, not sometimes or whenever you feel like it. He says always rejoice in the Lord. Now think about it just for a moment, what that means to me as a believer. You know, when we go through the tough times and circumstances, who's there for us? Are our friends? Now, we might be fortunate we got a friend that stays with us all the way through, but there's not too many of them around. But you know, the Lord doesn't come and go when things get tough. He's no fly-by-nighter. He's not only there in the good times, He's a sticker through everything that we experience in life, be it good or bad. He never wavers. He never changes. I know who He is, and my faith is strong. No matter what I'm experiencing in life, the Lord is over and above my circumstances. That means I can trust Him to see me through. knowing He has my best interest at heart. Now that's a challenge for us today in our modern society. Now why do I say that? Because we're so busy, so distressed, so full of anxiety, so uncertain about the future, and we're struggling to deal with our problems, and we're looking for someone to give us a quick fix to get us from one situation to another. And you know what? We're impatient people. We want a solution when? When do you want the problem solved? When do you want the problem fixed? When do you want your cup of coffee? Now. Not tomorrow. Not 10 minutes. You want it now. Every one of us is impatient. There are times when you might be driving and you get pulled up, and I've had it so many times that I leave to go to Kamali and I've copped every red light from here through to Palmerston. And I thought, what have I done wrong? And you sit there and you think, I've got to be there shortly. Why don't these lights change? We become impatient. We want an immediate solution. And when we want an immediate solution, what do we focus on? Our circumstances, rather than seeking the one who controls those circumstances. Now things can get hard, but looking at the Old Testament, God gave His people the book of Psalms. Now why did He give them the book of Psalms? How many Psalms are there? 150 Psalms. And what do they cover? Just about everything in life. He gave it to them to memorize and put to music. Think about it. 150 Psalms. Memorize them. Put them to music. You won't forget them. Why? So they could remember to seek God's presence during the tough times and to rejoice in Him. Now, I'm not much of a singer. Are you? What makes you sing? What makes you want to sing? Break out in song. Not much. You see, there are people who love to sing. And singing and giving thanks, you know what it does? It lightens the load. And if it lightens the load, it enables people to rejoice in the Lord. And when you are singing, you're forgetting about your problems. You're forgetting about your circumstances. And when you're singing to the Lord or singing a song, the circumstances seem insignificant. They seem to be a little further away. And when you're going through tough times, sing to yourself or remember a promise of Scripture that you've memorized and see how much it comforts you. The challenge for us is to remind ourselves that we have much to rejoice in. We all have much to rejoice in. We rejoice in who our God is. Our God is sovereign. He's over everything. There's no circumstances in life that He's not in charge of. So, I can resist the circumstances by not allowing them to control me. Why? Because God is using the circumstances for my good, Think of Psalm 139. It says, God knows when I do what? When I sit down. He knows when I get up. He knows the words that I speak. He knows the way I'm going to walk and holds every part of my life in total control. Now, the interesting thing is, that's all theory up here. It's in my head. I've memorized it. I've learned it. I know it. But it's something else to believe in your heart when you're going through difficult times. I can rejoice because God is using my life so that other people can hear the gospel and be saved. God is using my life so that other Christians can be encouraged to love God more and serve Him more faithfully. I can rejoice because I enjoy instant access to God 24/7. Do you know that any time I want to, I can talk to God and He listens? The God of the universe listens to everything I have to say, even if it may be a long conversation. As one old commentator said, the more I understand my God, the stronger my faith in Him and His plan. The greater the depth of my joy, the deeper my joy, the more untouchable it is, because God's in control. Why would I ever waver in my faith? Why would I doubt? How can I doubt a God who's so clearly revealed in Scripture? Maybe it's time for many of us to put the theory into practice as believers and get our act together. Now in verse 5, it's a sincere fervour. Let everyone see that you are gentle and kind. The Lord is coming soon. Now the challenge Paul is asking us here is to let people see you for what you really are. In other words, what sort of person are you? What does your life show? Is it any different from those around you? How contented are you in life? Interesting question. And Paul uses a Greek word, epieikos, lovely word, epieikos. And it has so many meanings to choose from. Now people say, if you learn Greek, it's so specific. Well, Greek is specific, but when you try and translate the Greek into English, it's not so specific. It can have many, many meanings. And this is one word that's very difficult to put into English, because it can mean you are a responsive person to a worthwhile appeal by someone who needs assistance. In other words, if someone says, look, can you come and help me? They appeal to you, and you respond positively. It can mean that. It can also mean you've got a big heart. You are super generous. It can mean that you wish goodwill on all people and will do whatever you can to make sure they receive good things. In other words, you extend yourself for the benefit of others by going the extra mile, by putting yourself out so that others can gain the benefit of what you do. So that just gives you some idea of trying to translate this word epieikos. But it gives you a taste of a list and helps you see how difficult it can be to translate something into English. It could be seen as friendliness. It can be seen as overgenerous. It can be seen as someone who's prepared to overlook the faults and failures of others. It can be seen as leniency or indulgence or ability to not pay back or be vengeful to others who've offended you or failed you. It's a word that covers many things. But one of the words that I think covers a multitude of these meanings is this: grace. When you think about it, what does grace cover? When we look at what grace means, it covers the people who offend you. It covers the people who mistreat you, who misjudge you, who represent who you are, who haven't given you what you deserve, who maybe have ruined your reputation, who hate you with an intense hostility, and you accept it graciously. That's exactly what the grace of God is like. When you think about it, you may have hated me, you may have been my enemies, God could say. You've shaken your fist in my face. You may have blasphemed me. You may have mistreated me, misjudged me. You may have done all that. And yet I still reach out to you in love. In other words, you don't demand your rights. It's being full of grace. It's being generous. Now that flies in the face of our culture today, because our culture today is about one thing. Concerns me. Individualism. Now what is that individualism? It's the idea that people should have the freedom to be themselves, follow their own goals, valuing independence and not relying on the group. In other words, it's about me and what I want. And it's based upon humanistic thinking. And it comes from the idea of evolution that teaches us we are nothing more than animals, so we're to function and respond accordingly. It promotes the rights of individuals. It says man can be anything he wants to be. He can do whatever he wants to do. And if it makes him feel good, then he should go ahead and do it. But only if it doesn't hurt me. If he hurts me, then he shouldn't do it. And that's the mindset that we have in our culture today. As long as I don't hurt you, and you don't hurt me, there's nothing wrong with it. The priority in life is to feel good about yourself. Just pamper yourself. Look out for yourself. Don't overextend yourself on behalf of others. You owe it to yourself. Elevate yourself. Love yourself. Develop and become the best version of yourself that you can. And you know what? That type of thinking has also spilled over into the church with great effect. Instead of being community focused, we're focused on individuals. What can the church offer me? What benefits are there for me to stay in it? So that church then becomes a place where self-love grows in abundance, where whatever makes me feel good, whatever makes me happy and satisfied, whatever builds me up, whatever helps me get over my inferiority complex, whatever gives me a positive self-image, then that's what I'm going to do. Now, what do you think Paul has got to say? He's saying, look, brothers and sisters in the Lord, you just hang on for a second. Is that the way things are supposed to work? Is that how we all get on the same page, moving in the same direction with the same purpose in mind? If I'm right with God, then I can have confidence that God will sort out things and people in my life. I don't need to stand upon my rights. I don't need to demand that anyone else recognize me as a person of influence or importance. If they want to treat me like dirt or stab me in the back or do despicable things to me, I'm not going to allow them to dictate my response to them. I'm not concerned in the least about me, says Paul. Paul puts it this way: I have learned that whatever state I find myself in, what have I learned? to be content. Now that's a big statement. Whatever circumstances I found myself in, to be content or satisfied. Because life is not about me and what I want. I choose to do the opposite of looking after myself. Instead, I choose to look after others and make sure their needs are being met. That's grace. Now, how do people remain informed about information and about what other people think about today? What is their primary source of information? How many of you got your phones? Do you check by email? Do you look at Facebook? Do you look at YouTube to see what's happening around the world? Now, is it all upfront, 100% reliable? You know, I'm amazed at AI and what it can do. It cons the best of people. But social media, the influence of social media on society and human behaviour has a lot to answer for. Why do so many young people commit suicide? They go on social media to see what such and such is saying about them. Now, is social media, is it reality? And the answer is no. It's not. But people take it as gospel. That's what people think about me. Well, and they tell me that, you know, I should end my life because I'm useless, according to them. But people are so fixed on what others are saying about them on social media platforms. They take what they see and read personally as it being the gospel. And then they filter everything. And I just don't mean some things. I mean they filter everything through these platforms or use them to tell others about everything that ever happens to them. Now, I'm amazed. I'm a private person. I do not want to put up on Facebook a picture of me kicking my toe and it's bleeding all over the place. I mean, why would you want to put that up on Facebook? Yet people do. Among other things, I've just had breakfast and this is what I had for breakfast. Oh, yahoo! You want everybody to know what you had for breakfast? I don't. But it's up there. And people take it as gospel that everything up there, they filter it through and say, oh, did you hear about such and such? They had baked beans for lunch. Really? Who cares? But people, instead of relying, and I'm talking about Christians here, they rely more on the social platforms and what people think and say and information than they do about the Bible and what God has to say. I'm sorry, but that's becoming a reality. People are on ego trips today. And it doesn't take much to hurt and wound people through these platforms. And these platforms are designed and molded to shape vulnerable people into their way of thinking. And as a result, many people are suffering from anxiety disorders or an inability to communicate with real people over real issues. Now, I'm amazed. You go to a restaurant or you go to the eatery. You know, I think it's fascinating when you've got couples at a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant, you want to have a meal, you want to have a conversation with the people opposite you, right? You know what I see? They don't talk. They just text. What's the point? I'd rather talk to someone face to face and communicate and know what their feeling and know what they're saying. I don't want a machine dictating and say, dit, and I go, dit, and they go, dit. How boring. Have a conversation with real people. Talk about real issues. It might be enlightening to hear someone actually speak. To be strong and firm in the Lord happens to those who cultivate people in a fellowship of love, who maintain joy despite the circumstances they're in, and they do not demand recognition for everything that they do or what they feel they deserve. They have a sincere fervour for reaching others with the grace of the Lord Jesus. And we'll have to leave it there. I didn't get very far again.